I spent 30 years managing projects at NASA. Then I retired and I started a drone business, a one-man drone business at the age of 63. Just me, a couple drones, Part 107 license, and off I went. That was 10 years ago. Here's what I learned. I started in 2016, basically when FAA's Part 107 first came out. I think it came out in August, and I got licensed shortly thereafter. I started in agriculture. I had a couple DJI Phantom 4 Pros. Those were kind of a big deal back then. And I also had a multispectral camera. So, but what I learned in fairly short order that flying crop health over orchards and such as that, it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I got pretty discouraged. So after about a year of that, I sold out to a friend of mine. He bought all my equipment. And then after a couple more years, well, I guess probably the year after that, I decided to start flying again, more as a hobby than anything. But I did still have my license. And I decided that I wanted to start flying business again. I restarted a couple years ago with an intention, a focused intention to do construction, a little bit of real estate, but mostly construction, progress, documentation, such as that. A couple weeks ago, I recorded and posted a video of me going out on a construction drone job and shared that video, and it got a pretty big response. I was shocked, actually, but it garnered a lot of questions about the business. So I thought it would be appropriate to go ahead and record another video and answer all your questions, okay? So let's get after it. The first question is actually a little bit local. It's from Mrs. Kentucky Dog, Mrs. Kai Dog, the Mrs. Kai Dog. Anyway, she mentioned Visalia. Apparently, she's here locally and wanted, I say she, maybe it's a he, and wanted to know if there's an RC flying field nearby. And yes, there is. I forget the name of the club, but it's up north of Visalia. They actually have a strip for RC planes. I think they're mostly into gliders. Anyway, yes, there is. Go ahead and search for it. Second question from Vosk versus Collection. Let's see how I learned to use the Matrice 4. The drones I use now mostly is the Matrice 4. I'm going back to my DJI Air 2S, and then I have an Air 3S that I use for main photography purposes. But as far as how, there wasn't a specific way to learn how to fly that Matrice. It flies like any drone, so the controller is a little more complicated, so you need to spend some time. I spent time on YouTube, actually, just looking at videos on how to use that controller. I had a couple questions on what software I use for mapping. I use DroneLink. The Matrice 4 is, the Matrice 4E is quite capable. That controller you can do mapping with. I just haven't gotten accustomed to it. I'm so used to DroneLink. As a third-party application, you can't use DroneLink, not easily anyway, on a lot of their DJI drones, but you can load it on the Matrice 4, the RC2 Plus. You can load it on there, and you can load it on the old controller for the Air 2S. That's why I keep using the Air 2S, but it's DroneLink. There are many out there that you can use. Maps Made Easy, I've used that a couple times, but I generally don't anymore. Okay, let's see what we got next. Warmer Things asks, is this still allowed, DJI in the USA? Yes, it is. Now, I'm well aware that there's a lot of goofiness going on with DJI or foreign made drones. A lot of paranoia ginned up in the government, unfounded, I believe, but it's there nonetheless. So they keep. I'm not going to say I know what's going to happen there because I have no idea. Once I think I get where they're going, it changes. So it's primarily the FCC putting all these restrictions on, but I'm sure they're doing it uh, with motivation from others. Okay, but yes, you can still fly DJI drones in the U.S. and drones that you already have, they're good to go. Where it's going to get complicated is buying new drones. So, especially new designs of drones is virtually impossible to get in the U.S. But yes, you can still fly DJI drones in the U.S. From Claw IW, what program do you use to stitch the aerial photos together? The uh, the job that I'm on now, the client actually has their own application, or it's not their own, but the one that they've signed up to called Open Space. So that is a construction specific application. So it's not really available um, to the average drone user because it's a lot more than drones. It's full construction tracking. But I have used Maps Made Easy. I do have Open Space. Open Space. I do have ODM, which is an open source application. I have used that, but I don't use it much anymore. Like I say, I'm using that Open Space, which is from the construction company. Okay. How long did it complete? How long did it take to complete this task? And did you use more than one battery to do so? Since you're asking for the battery, I'm assuming you're asking how long it took to complete each flight. And I'm usually there on site for maybe about an hour, hour and a half every week. I try to do it on Thursdays just to be consistent. But I'm usually there about an hour and a half. If you're asking about the duration of the job itself, I'm 1 year in, and probably another year to go if they want me to stick around and film the landscaping and all that, the parking lots and all that going in. As the batteries go, typically on the Matrice 4E, I just use one battery, and that gets the map done, which is about 300 images that get stitched together. I get the map done, I get the full orbit done, and then I do cardinal photos of the whole site, and it gets that done. And that's just I can do all that in one battery. The Air 3S, when I start doing the hyperlapse and random photos of things that are going on, things that I think look important or that the project manager might want to see, I just take a bunch of photos. I usually just use one battery for that. If there's a lot going on, like on times when I do the orbit of each building, there are three main buildings. They call it building A, B, and C. And I'll do an orbit individually around those. And if I do that and take extra, a lot of photos, I might go to two batteries on the Air 3S. So that's what I do for batteries. Now, a question was asked, and I can't find who asked it, but they asked, what do I use to keep connected to the internet? And I've got this hotspot. This brand is Orbic. Specifically, this is the Verizon version of Orbic, and I use that. And the reason he asked is because the 4E Matrice 4E is an RTK drone, And though if you're using RTK, you have to be connected to the internet. So that's why he's asking the question. That's what I use. RTK is centimeter level accuracy, and you have a whole network of beacons that keep your location a lot more accurate than just flying a drone. And the 4E has that receiver on top. It receives satellites and then gets corrections via the internet, and it's centimeter level accuracy, so it's pretty sharp. The generator and the power bank that I use, the power bank is an Anchor. The generator I got from Harbor Freight. Predator, I think, is their brand. It's a Predator 2000. So that's what I use for power. And again, I only need those on really long days, which I've had a few of. I've had to fly a couple Walmart distribution centers, which are huge, and it takes all day, a lot, and over 30,000 images in that map. So that's what those are. And again, a question, is that drone deploy that I was showing on the controller? And no, that was Drone Link. I've never actually used Drone Deploy. It's obviously one of the most popular applications, but I, for one, cannot afford it. So how did I get started? Well, like I say, I got started when a friend of mine, still a friend of mine, very, very much in the drone business, he needed help. He was going to be out of town, and he was flying for an agriculture outfit, and he asked me if I could help, and I said sure. So he turned me on to that group, and I got connected, and they started putting me out on orchard flights, like I say, just crop health flights, and I started doing that a lot, a few times a week, and I did it for quite a while, but it did wear me out because when you're flying in orchards, you can't just fly the whole orchard. This was like a 3,000 acre orchard, and they didn't want me to fly the whole orchard. They just wanted me to fly certain points. Well, I couldn't get to many of those points from one place, so I had to keep moving around in the orchard and get out of the truck, set up, fly, get back in the truck, move, do it all over again. So it was quite exhausting. It was more than I expected. Albino DG J1K asks how to get started in the field. I would go to I would do a search. I wish I had the link, but I don't. I would do a search on FAA US. I'll tell you what, I'll put a link down in the description to the FAA site where it explains everything about getting your license. But as far as, what you need to do to get started, there are a lot of YouTube videos on how to get started in the drone business. You don't need a really expensive drone. Like I said, I do have the Matrice 4E, which is a really expensive drone. And I've kind of gone back to my Air 2S, and I did that because it does load third party applications on the controller. I can still use Drone Link on that, and it has the 2-inch sensor. I'm sorry, a 1-inch sensor at 20 megapixels. So it's quite a capable drone. It's old, but it's still quite capable. So look around through YouTube, and it'll get you familiar. But again, the specifics on the Part 107, you'll need to go to the FAA UAS site. Places of Judgment ask, I assume they allow you to do this, and yes, they do. And by allow, I've already explained the U.S. DJI restrictions and all that. Yes, I'm allowed to fly the drone. Am I allowed to fly the construction site? Yes. I'm on contract with the builder, so yes, I'm allowed to be there. I set up across the road. There's a stockyard right there across the street where I normally set up. I've had those folks come ask me a couple times what I'm doing. Once I explained to them what I was doing, I do wear a high visibility vest, so I'm not trying to sneak around. Once I explained to them what I'm doing, they're fine. They leave me alone now. So Bruce Berry asked, was this a building, not a data center? No, it's definitely not a data center. It was, as I explained in the video, it was a new civic center that Visalia has been planning on for years and saving up for it for years and years, 20 years at least. So on my moving hyperlapse, this is from Camp C Media Group. When I'm moving through hyperlapse, did I test the gimbal tilt? No, I set the gimbal tilt. It's a waypoint hyperlapse. And at each waypoint, I set a point of interest, like you described here. Not really a point of interest. I set at the different waypoints. I set the direction and the angle where I wanted it to go, and then it just sort of moved slowly through that you saw in the video. I only use the DJI Mini 5 Pro. That does hyperlapse. Again, I use the DJI Fly app for that hyperlapse, and DJI Mini 5 Pro does do that. The waypoint flights and hyperlapse flights. Okay, David 417, what software are you using for mapping? Again, I'm using client specified construction application. It does the mapping once I upload all the photos. What mic are you using? On that video, I was using a DJI Mic 2. I actually have two Mic Minis, but that Mic 2 does a good job, so I just use it. I keep it with my camera. The camera I was using is a Osmo Pocket 4. They're hard to get. They were impossible to get in the U.S., and I ordered it from Korea on eBay. How did I get the job? That's a very good question. How did I get the job? Once I decided to get serious, I went to a city council meeting, and I sat in. And at that city council meeting, it just so happened that the construction contract for the Civic Center was awarded. And I was sitting practically next to the project manager for that. And when the meeting was over, I got up and shook his hand, congratulated him, and asked him if he had a drone operator or was interested in having progression drone shots on that site. He said they were interested, and he thought his boss already had a drone guy set up. And I said, well, okay. And I handed him one of my cards and asked him, I said, if anything changes, give me a call. The next day, he called me, and apparently what he thought his boss had set up wasn't really set up. The guy wasn't local or something like that, and asked me if I was interested, and we worked it out. And so I started doing it. Again, that was a little over a year ago. And on that note, I know somebody asked, how do I charge? And that is a tough subject to take on. It's a very common question, but it's just hard to say, especially on drone jobs. They're all unique, even in real estate. I mean, different houses have different requirements. It's hard to set a price. I've been asked for a price sheet before, and I don't even have a price sheet. Everything is so unique. It's hard to do that. On this construction job, when we talked on the phone, he asked for a price, and in fact, he asked for a price sheet. I told him I didn't have one, and I explained to him what I could do, and he asked me how much, and I quoted what I thought was an ideal price, And then he balked and said, they didn't really have a budget. That wasn't part of the contract proposal. Was a drone operator, and I get that. And we talked a lot. He didn't immediately give up on me, which was a blessing. That was good. And so I finally realized in my own head, he doesn't have a budget. I'm in this as a retirement gig. I'm not. This isn't to put food on the table. So we landed at $700 a month to do once a week flights, and I invoiced them monthly. Now, I think that was way too low. But the guy was a nice guy. It was a good gig, a 2-year long gig. So, why be an idiot about it? So I took it. And so that's where we landed. I hope that helps. Oh, is the power bank I use a DJI is the power bank I use a DJI product? And no, it's not. They do have those power banks, and they're quite good as far as I hear. Again, is that drone deployed? No, it's not. Okay, I think that's it for the questions. If you have any more questions, leave them in the link below, or in the comments below. And I think that's going to be it. If you're interested in more of this kind of contact, I do this, drones, and I talk some about my faith, and I've even talked a little bit about starting a YouTube channel. So I'm kind of all over the map right now. But if you would subscribe, like, and comment, let me know if you have any other questions, and we will do this again, I'm sure. So when you share ideas, you inspire ideas. So keep that in mind, and thanks for stopping in, and we will see you next time. Take care now.